And our audio's live on our end now, so don't say
Okay.
too many terrible things.
Oh, that's funny. Come on. Come on.
You can do it, Steve.
I'm just waiting for it to pop up on Rockfin.
I'm just kind of glad that Vladimir Putin is popping in as well. I didn't realize that he was going to be an esteemed guest today.
Oh, I need to show you how to reverse your camera, Glory.
Yeah, I know how to, but I wanted to make it so you could fucking I don't even know, but I know how to reverse it. Let me do that shit real quick.
Alrighty.
I wonder if that'll flip it. Oh wait, wrong one. I didn't even click something. Shit.
I think it's in the webcam source on OBS.
Oh, is it in the webcam source or from OBS? Because I'm just gonna flip the image. Or can you see the words? No, you can't.
You can't.
Fuck.
You got to mirror it. Go to the webcam
Yeah.
settings. There should be a checkbox for it. We do it live.
Oh man, I want to have a meltdown like that with a huge audience once, just like that.
Oh, you're
that
good now,
type of
Glory.
meltdown.
You're good.
Ooh,
Glory.
it's got to be a good one, But there has to be people around too. It can't just be, your run-of-the-mill meltdown. It has to be literally a temper tantrum over nothing meltdown.
There it is.
Man, it's laggy today.
Do.
This is what you get, Rockfin. Behind the scenes gravy train with biscuit wheels. This is how the sausage is made.
We should get like a CNN hot mic moment, just shit talking someone.
I was just watching that and it was tough. There was literally a guy walking through what seemed to be a school and he said, everybody's concerned about COVID and they just want some kind of an outcome, good or bad. And I'm like, what? Or bad? Who the fuck is rooting for a bad outcome on fucking COVID on any level? And I'm just thinking to myself, CNN, why not? They can say whatever they want. Sure.
They literally say anything they want. And they just run with it.
The important thing, guys, is that we're for good things and against bad things.
Very critical.
Hey, that's like the Biden campaign slogan, basically.
Build back
better.
Build back better.
Which he plagiarized from the UK anyway. It's the same shit that Boris Johnson had.
No, it's also Canada. It's a World Economic Forum thing.
Well, and it's a shitty fucking slogan.
Hey, but it's alliterative.
It's so bad.
That makes all the difference.
I mean, I guess they think so. I mean, they sit in their boardrooms and they're like, yes, 3 Bs, we've done it. I mean, that's pretty much how those things work.
The original
Right,
BBB
McKinsey.
is Big Baller Brand. Oh, shit.
He plagiarized from the UK.
Okay.
The original BBB is Big Baller Brand. I don't know how many of you follow LeVar Ball, or basketball.
I do not.
Not. What about the Ball family? Because they've been on the news, and that's about all I know.
Wow. So much has already happened today. I mean, I've tried not to be checking constantly, but it's been, I don't know. You guys see how many technical glitches there were with voting machines in 6 or 7 states?
It's a repeat of the fucking primary. I expected no less from these dumbass voting machines.
I think it's a little different now, though, because before the election, you would DHS and Cyber Command and all this stuff hype up foreign hackers, and so every time there's a glitch, people are like, "Fuck, it's Iran," or it's China. But if they hadn't been upping that constantly, people just be like, "Oh yeah, this shit happens every election," which it pretty much does, right? Since they've had electronic voting machines be a key part of it, but they've drummed up the expectation of get ready for the North Koreans and the Iranians to come.
Yeah, this shit happened all over the fucking place in LA County during the primary, and no one talked about it. It's Yo, so there are students waiting in line at 10:30 at night because there's only 2 operating machines. Can we talk about the no. Bernie? Like, what are you doing?
Go.
Did it pop?
I'm ready. Everything's live and rolling, and links are out, and all that good stuff.
Give us an intro, Steve.
Hey everyone, thanks for hanging out with us today on Election Day. We are live now on Rockfin and DLive, and I am very, 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 very pleased to be joined by both Jason Bermas and Whitney Webb. This is going to get, I'm sure, a little silly. So let's get right the hell into it. I saw
Glory
the National
Jones.
Guard roll into Chicago this morning. Did everybody else see that too?
They're in a bunch of places.
Yeah.
How many cities are we up to now with National Guard troops just hanging out at the ready?
Too fucking many. That's how I feel about it. It's kind of a mess. Well, because the National Guard, there's the ones you see, but they also said nationwide that a bunch of the poll workers are are National Guardsmen in civilian clothing. Right. So you have some National Guard guys in uniform and some that are not in uniform in all of these cities throughout the country. So, that's fun.
Well, I've got a lot of people out in New York City, obviously, and they're literally posting selfies on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram of, downtown Manhattan and other places around the city completely boarded up.
It's the same thing in
Yikes.
downtown LA. I have a coworker that lives downtown, and he's essentially been telling me, like, yeah, they're boarding up everything. They're boarding up every business. And then he's telling me how he might just go and stay with like his family in Orange County because people are telling him that he has to be prepared to stay in his apartment like the whole day to, maybe even the next couple weeks if shit really goes down. So, yeah.
Can I ask this for anybody, and let's see what the answer is here. Can anybody tell me the last time that a nation boarded up, a nation, not a city, not a state, in the light of any event, not just an election, just anything at all? I mean, is there a time in history, in modern history, that people throughout the country decided in large cities that, oh, fuck, shit is going down and we're boarding up? Is this unprecedented, or am I missing something?
Oh, it's definitely unprecedented for the U.S. But I mean, we have to keep in mind, too, that we have been, a lot of the reason I would argue for this is that mainstream media has been saying for the past several months, right, that like, oh, it's going to be total chaos on election day, get ready. Right. So people are like responding to that. And, because of what happened this summer in the U.S., I think that's what, how people are reacting. It's going on here with all of this, you have to keep in mind, though, that the most important thing about this seeding of the narrative of chaos well before the election even happens is that originates with intelligence companies and intelligence agencies who were saying last year and also in 2018 that the 2020 election was going to be a chaotic clusterfuck, right? And so the fact that they've been promoting that narrative constantly in the lead up to today should tell you a lot, especially considering, when the intelligence agents or groups like the CIA tell you something's going to happen, believe them because they make it happen. They may blame some other group or whatever, but, they're telling you chaos is coming and blame X, Y, and Z. They're usually the ones that make that shit happen, right? So just disconcerting to see it, playing out like a lot of us were kind of worried it would. Hopefully it doesn't get too crazy, but, they've definitely set up a lot of stuff on the ground that we can, if you guys want, of like explaining all the stuff going on.
Yeah, you did.
With Ryan and the Last American Vagabond, put all the receipts out there or whatever, sources, whatever you want to call it. about the stuff going on. But like the National Guard deployments, the plans for all of the crazy litigation that we're going to see after the election day about, contesting the results, that it's going to be Bush versus Gore 2.0. This has all been set up by like a web of intelligence front companies and Obama era national security officials, and all of this stuff. And the fact that Philadelphia and Pennsylvania specifically are going to be so crazy, and we're already seeing all this information about it being crazy coming out. I mean, the people setting that up specifically in Philadelphia are bad news and give a lot of ammo to people that want to accuse this of being or label this as being like a coup by the Democrats or whatever, because like one of the ladies who urged the people in Philadelphia and other cities around the country, right, to make a task force to protect the elections from Trump and all this stuff is Mary McCord, who was responsible for the Crossfire Hurricane illegal FISA spying on the Trump campaign. So to choose her to be the lady going to all these cities and states and battleground states throughout the country, they knew that would make Trump supporters like super mad, right? I mean, they chose her for a reason. And like I was saying, intelligence agencies are the one that were like, it's going to be chaos. And what do you know? I mean, they're choosing the agents of chaos, both on left and right, I would argue. And we can get more into that if you guys want. But I mean, this is just being set up to fail,
Well, not only is it intelligence kind of pushing this shit out there, it's also media really manufacturing consent for all kinds of chaos. You have people of independent media. You have punk asses like Cenk Uygur going and saying, well, there's no way Biden's going to win this unless if they cheat, unless if they steal it from us. And if that happens, we got to be ready. And it's like a single vote on election day hasn't been counted yet. And people in the media are starting to manufacture consent for some kind of like civil war, conflict of interest, because you have both sides declaring victory confidently, like just straight up, not even like, oh, I think this person has the edge, straight up. No, this side is winning. And if not, it's because of cheating. So we need to, stand back and stand by and shit. And we need to go to the polls and run over each other with hacked cars and shit. It's a clusterfuck.
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it. But, a lot of this stuff going down is really dangerous. And they're trying to drive this into a place I don't think any level-headed, reasonable American wants. So, we have to keep all of that stuff in mind. But they are really, earlier today, they tweeted out, it was like a major news organization. They were saying, if the news organizations declare Biden the winner, he will address the nation as the president-elect and start forming his government immediately. So the news organizations, meaning the ones that like Trump calls fake news all the time, right? They declare Biden the winner. Okay, and then he'll start forming his government. He'll declare victory regardless of what the count actually is. And then, it's going to get nuts. But we already knew this was going to happen, right? Because like the Transition Integrity Project, these other groups gamed out 4 different scenarios of like vote counts and how to create insane chaos regardless of which one of them happens. And the Transition Integrity Project is DNC officials, national security officials, and Bush era neocons and never Trumpers all coming together to game out how to screw everything over. Those guys represent the uniparty, the establishment, which most Americans hate, right? And I think they know that most Americans hate them. So I think, at the end of the day, this chaos that they gamed out how to create is how they're figuring out how to maintain, control over how things go from this point out, right? I don't know if that made sense.
No, it absolutely did. So since you brought up Philadelphia and Pennsylvania in particular, over the last 2 days, you saw Trump's rally. I mean, we're talking about tens of thousands. No matter what you think the real count is, tens of thousands legitimately showed up to that. Now, in contrast to Trump doing that amongst several rallies, obviously being more cognizant to Biden, being off the cuff, having legitimate people love him, and then Biden struggling to speak for 15 minutes off a teleprompter, getting his jacket wrong, doesn't even know he's not wearing a Philadelphia fucking Eagles jacket. How in the world Seriously, how in the world, out of any state, could the media actually project tonight not only Biden winning, but Biden winning that state and, making that a reality? Because I got to say this. If somehow Biden were to win the election and the media declare it for them tonight, I don't think there are riots. I don't believe there are riots. And I think that, like you said, they've been getting us ready for chaos. So in a way, I don't even think that they're going to be able to rig it. They may be able to rig it to put, cast some doubt in people's minds, right? A few news organizations are going to lean towards Biden because, the votes they have now, and they know how many Democratic voters are the ones that actually voted from mail-in. So we're going to hesitantly declare it for Biden. We're not going to say he actually won, but they're going to sow the seeds of doubt and kind of like push the narrative. I would say.
Well, they're going to push. Sorry.
They're
going to push that red mirage narrative, if you've heard of that.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, do they do so in an incremental manner? In other words, it's not all the media that declares Biden the winner tonight, right? But it's some of the media. And they say, we're going to have to wait another week to make it definite. But, CNN and MSNBC have called it for him, and we should have the results by November 10th. And then all the Democrat establishment can say, see, we need an extension till November 10th. But then the legislation will say, we can drag it on till God knows when, until they get that lovely Pelosi scenario in January.
I think we're going to have both campaigns declare victory tonight.
Totally.
I do agree that sowing doubt or chaos is much more important than the media declaring for certain that, Biden or Trump is the president. I think that as long as there's the fear of the unknown, that can be weaponized and used to manipulate people. And I mean, even Jason, when Greg Palast was on with you guys, the Union of the Unwanted show a couple of weeks back, like he was going so hard at that, like the Proud Boys are gonna burn down ballot stations, and they're gonna show up with like 18 tanks, and it's gonna be chaos. And like
he kept saying Boogaloo Boys. I don't even know they exist. Like he was actually when he brought up, like, all right, the Proud Boys are one thing, and saying that Roger Stone runs them is a little bit more than absurd. But okay, maybe I can run a little, I can jog with that narrative, Greg. But then when you bring up the Boogaloo,
that'd be fun to jog with,
right? It's seriously, but when you say the Boogaloo Boys, it's like full stop. I tripped over my shoelaces, because now we're talking about literally imagination land right-wing activists that like to dress up like Hunter S. Thompson. Like, what the fuck are we talking about here?
Hey, but the Boogaloo Boys, it's worth pointing out, the ones that have been arrested for acts of violence, a lot of them were active duty military. Why have these people that are fear-mongering about them not brought that up? They're working for the Pentagon right now. I mean, that's not good, especially when we can talk more about this later too, DHS and the FBI's Joint Counterterrorism Task Force pivoting to try and gin up the domestic terror threat, because the National Security State announced earlier this year that another 9/11 is coming. They can see it building, meaning they're creating it, and they can't stop it, meaning they don't want to stop it. And that it's going to be white supremacist, right-wing terrorists, and that they're creating that, manufacturing that threat. So the fact that we have the Governor Whitmer plot being led by an FBI informant who was paid $24,000 to set that shit up, right? Happening. And that's what they're pointing the finger at, being like, look, militia violence on election day. And then the Boogaloo Boys being the other group, and they're like full of active duty military. Why are people not like scratching their heads and being like, what? I mean, Trump derangement syndrome does that to people. They're all emotional and be like, Trump is the source of all chaos and problems in the United States. I mean, that's fucking clownish. And the fact that people are going to point like I don't want to shit all over Greg Palast or whatever, but why doesn't, if he's so concerned about voter fraud as an act, why doesn't he talk about how the DNC has rigged their past two primaries for president in a huge way? So it's something that happens with both parties.
In Palast's defense, he does talk about that during primary season for like a week, and then immediately pivots to, here's how the Republicans are going to steal the next election. Like, to the point to where he wrote a book called How Trump Stole the 2020 Election and released it in like August or something like that. You know, I mean, it's farcical on its face, but he'll like for 10 minutes he'll act like he pays attention to what the Democrats do in their own party in their primaries, and then immediately will pivot and be like, but the general election's the thing that really matters, and here's all of these different ways that the general election can get stolen from you. Although I don't know if he said anything this year. He did in 2016. But the Democrats blatantly rigged their primary this year too, like to the point to where they hired Shadow Inc.
to where they hired Shadow Inc.
LA County had $300 million to get their shit together. We, by the way, we still don't know what happened with that $300 million because we went to that Board of Supervisors meeting and they didn't tell us shit about it. Okay, and they proceeded to tell like almost every activist there to just shut up and like, listen, you got 60 seconds. As soon as 60 seconds pass, we're gonna mute your mic. Now shut up and get out. And and that's on top of all of the gaslighting shit you have to deal with. It's annoying as hell. So I mean, if there's anything that like, you know, we should be concerned about this election though, when it comes to rigging is how the flying fuck the mail-in ballots are going to be counted. Because it's like, I honestly don't even know if this election will be something that's dragged out because they've been counting the early votes and the mailing ballots for like weeks.
It's going to be dragged out. Now. They've already said they're going to drag it out. Pennsylvania and Michigan, the swing states, said they won't start counting most of their mail-in ballots and things that already came in until after Election Day, meaning tomorrow. So, I mean, they're going to drag this out. So, like, this whole election chaos scenario, you know, it's not just going to be like a one-day event where like all the chaos, whatever, you know, it's not going to be like a 9/11 style day where like, oh, it happens and then it's over and then we recover from it. I mean, the way they've gamed this out, they call it, you know, like the TIP, the Transition Integrity Project people, they call it a dark 11 weeks between Election Day and Inauguration Day, and then all that narrative of the dark winter, the darkest winter, and all this stuff, right? I mean, they are converging, and even the DHS officials, you know, say this stuff. They call it, this one DHS guy, like last month, he said, we have a witch's brew of all these awful things converging in this period between Election Day and Inauguration Day. I mean, they are going to hit us in this period with a ton of shit. I mean, they're going to not just throw the kitchen sink at you, they're going to throw the bathroom sink, the toilet, and the bathtub. You're going to get hit with all that shit at once. And they basically are prepping us for that. So this is when that period starts today. We won't see everything that they've been telling us they're going to do today necessarily. You know, they're going to drag this out.
And then it's going to provide a smokescreen for all the shit they want to do. They're going to roll up all the censorship fucks. They're going to take down all these outlets. And of course, like starting right now, BuzzFeed just released that article that essentially proves what we already knew, but just on BuzzFeed with regards to the fact that Julian Assange, surprise, surprise, he never colluded with Russia to obtain the DNC leaks. Wow, really? So you mean we should
seen that, right?
The guy who has a 100% like true record, who's never had to retract anything from his outlet, WikiLeaks, like we should have trusted his word? Really, BuzzFeed? No way. And of course, the story's going to get buried by all of this horse race shit. And then once it drags on, all of the censorship that's going to come is going to get buried by this horse race shit. And if it drags on until January, then Julian's extradition decision is probably going to get buried by horse race shit. So,
yeah, the Electoral College has until January 6th to read off their ballot total. Like, I don't even think they meet for a couple of weeks.
Well, they've already told you what's going to happen with that shit. They've said dueling electors, and this was also a thing from the Transition Integrity Project, but now it's been in mainstream media and they've cast it as inevitable. So basically what that whole dueling elector scenario is that in certain states that are set likely or expected to vote red, certain Democratic governors of those states, they named Michigan and North Carolina and a few other ones. That they're going to, those governors will choose a different set of electors than the one actually chosen by whatever vote counts are reported. And then they're going to send those to the Electoral College to vote as the governor wants. Right. And that's going to create complete chaos. But that's what a lot of, what this group wants, the abolition of the Electoral College. That's how they say Hillary Clinton lost in 2016 and we got stuck with Trump, right? Was because Hillary won the popular vote and the Electoral College is outdated. We need to get rid of it. I mean, we've heard that for the past 4 years, and now this dueling elector thing that started with the Transition Integrity Project has, been seeded into the mainstream media and repeated ad nauseum. Of course, it was first interjected into mainstream media by The Atlantic, whose editor-in-chief, David Frum, is part of the Transition Integrity Project. And, just been repeated. Like I saw it like a day ago in Reuters. It's in Associated Press. It's in all these mainstream outlets. They're talking about dueling electors. Reuters tweeted out today, election words you need to know. And dueling electors was there. The red mirage, blue shift is there. These are a lot of the narratives that they're probably going to run with. But the whole dueling electors thing, the whole point of that, per how they gamed this out, is to force Congress to choose the president and the vice president. To have the House of Representatives select the president and the Senate chooses the vice president. And that may be how they end up selling this at the end of the day. I mean, we'll have to see how it plays out, right? Because they're controlled by different parties. So you'd end up with a president that's chosen by the Democrat majority House, and then a Senate that's Republican majority that chooses the VP. So what would that be? Biden and Pence? Nuts, dude.
No, Biden
Uniparty fuckery.
No.
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 Biden's the placeholder. I wanted to speak to for a second to you talking about how they don't want the Electoral College and that they've kind of perpetrated this myth, in my opinion, that Trump definitely lost the popular vote. I did this live on air, and anybody can do this today. As soon as they started recounting votes via the Jill Stein scandal, I believe it was in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Trump started gaining votes and they cut that shit off quick. Before they cut it off, he had gained 131 votes. And that may seem minuscule, but when you look at a corrupt regime like Hillary Clinton, when you look like a John Brennan and a Clapper and all these people in the media, military, industrial complex, if you don't think they've rigged elections before, not only by ballot stuffing, not only by, getting rid of ballots like we've seen before in this ballot harvesting method, but also digitally. I believe they did all those things in 2016 and failed because this guy is just that fucking mega popular. He's a cartoon character on some levels, right? I mean, the stuff the guy says and does, as much as I don't like him, like I posted something yesterday and I caught some flack for it, but it was a compilation of Trump doing his dad dance, the little punch dance. It's a Macho Man. And I'm sorry, if that doesn't fucking make you smile like this much, I don't know what your sense of humor is like or whether you're a human being. I mean, if you want to laugh at him and his diaper ass, fine. But the bottom line to me is it was funny. The guy has entertainment value. And, there are a few wins. The guy's far from perfect. But again, how many people are going to sit up on a stage against your opponent and go, Who put the cages up, Joe? Who did the cages, Joe? Like fucking no one. Like nobody. Like, so look, David Icke was on Alex Jones today. And I think, love or hate the lizard man himself, he's been the most consistent anti-war guy I've seen go through 2 decades plus of alternative media. And even he was saying today, I just can't imagine a Biden-Harris administration. He's like, I usually stay out of these left-right politics or, the lesser of two evils. But the bottom line is the way that the media has acted and the politicians have acted and the authoritarianism has come in, you can see their plan. And at the very least, Whitney, I'd say it's an accelerated one. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's definitely... I'm a big critic of Glenn Greenwald, but he did make a good point that the power structure that we've seen coalesce around Biden and Harris is Obama era and Bush era national security officials. Yeah. Silicon Valley, which by the way, Silicon Valley, people keep talking about it as a private entity, part of the private sector. It has merged with the state. Okay, it has merged with the national security apparatus. So that behemoth that clearly has a very Orwellian, totalitarian vision for the future of the United States has coalesced behind Biden and Harris. I mean, this is obviously very alarming. But, you know, when it comes to Trump, I honestly think at the end of the day, Trump is really just a persona. You know, he was like Ronald Reagan was an actor, you know, and the real guy in charge was Papa Bush.
Yeah.
Right. I think Trump, you know, a lot of his posturing, he's a good showman, right? And for a lot of people that support him, you know, his rhetoric can be really convincing, but you have to look at what the people he's put in power have been doing behind the scenes. What has Goldman banker Steve Mnuchin been doing this whole time? Screwing over literally everyone that's not, you know, in the 1%. What is, and this is really important in talking about what a Biden-Harris administration would likely usher in. What has Bill Barr been doing this whole time? He has been setting up the foundation for a pre-crime, Silicon Valley-powered police state. And he set this up last year, and they've been beta testing it in states throughout the country. And it's supposed to be activated at some point in 2020 per his original plan announced in October of last year. And by the Biden-Harris ticket, you know, they've pretty much said, not directly, but the people that fund them and the think tanks that are advising them and their advisors and all this stuff plan to enact police reform by basically giving all these high-tech surveillance toys to police, outsourcing a lot of policing to artificial intelligence algorithms and doing the same predictive policing shit, basically arguing that police brutality can be ended if we prevent less, or if we reduce the amount of police human or regular citizen interaction, and we put, you know, tech in there, right? And so obviously, you know, that's awful. But Trump's Department of Justice has been building that. DHS under Trump has also been supporting that. And it's worth pointing out, DHS under Trump, you know, at the beginning of October, a month before the election, they put out a Homeland Threat Assessment. And in there it says examples of Russian disinformation, anything denigrating Joe Biden. Are you kidding me? That's Trump's DHS in election season saying you're Russian disinfo and you can be deplatformed for foreign interference for criticizing Trump's opponent in election season with a month before the election. Where was pro-Trump media on that? I mean, they won't touch these issues. Why won't they point out how, you know, the national security state is setting up to demonize them right away? It's nuts. And to me, that, you know, really shatters a lot of this two-party paradigm stuff. There is an effort by intelligence agencies in the permanent government, whatever you want to call it, to usher in a sort of police state that's powered by high tech and essentially governed by this merged apparatus of the national security state and Silicon Valley. And we're seeing that, you know, maybe Trump is talking against it and saying Silicon Valley bad publicly, but what has been happening during his administration? You know, we have to pay attention to this. A lot of the stuff that I report on, the dangerous steps towards that, including the steps that have been taken under the guise of COVID-19 relief, have happened under Trump. And obviously Biden and Harris are openly backed by Silicon Valley and a lot of these national security officials. So, you know, maybe they'd take the mask off a little bit. But if Trump's reelected, he doesn't have to pander to his base anymore. People have to keep that in mind. There are certain things Trump couldn't do or couldn't say because it would certainly threaten his standing with his base. Operation Warp Speed is one of those things. You know, he promotes it, but he, you know, tries to sort of posture himself as anti-WHO. And anti-Bill Gates and anti-vaccine to an extent, but Operation Warp Speed, if you actually look at what's going on, I mean, he's technically responsible for that. He promotes it and all that stuff, and that'll continue whether it's Trump or it's Biden. I mean, both campaigns have already said that, right? So, you know, I think it, unfortunately, you know, who's going to be better, who's going to be worse? I mean, I don't really know if it's really fair to make that distinction. We're going to get stuck with policies and that are going to basically enslave us, whether we get, you know, Biden or Trump reelected. And I think we really need to start recognizing that's a real possibility and consider getting, you know, thinking how we're going to fight against this system, because we're going to get it either way. Maybe it might take more time either under Trump, but he set up the foundation. So, I mean, will it be more accelerated under Biden-Harris? Possibly. But it looks like, you know, 4 years, right? before the next presidential election. We don't have 4 years to stop the shit that they're rolling out.
So I was just going to ask, because you talked about Bush kind of running the administration under Reagan, and there's no doubt about that. If Reagan thought he had any power, that was kind of like, literally taken away as he was shot by John Hinckley, a Bush family friend. Somebody's brother was supposed to have dinner with Neil Bush the next night and then ushered in the limousine. Nobody look at that. Do you think in this administration in particular, the hardcore wranglers are people like Pompeo that have been in there for some time, really since the beginning? And then you have someone
Kushner.
Like Kushner, obviously, even being in there before the administration. But then you also have Haspel, kind of the silent CIA head you haven't heard much. And then Bill Barr to kind of keep it all together with his connections over the decades. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think it's as clear as it was. Ronald Reagan was obviously an actor that was chosen to be a figurehead for those interests, right? And then you had Bush Sr. being like, the real president. Like, I think, like you were pointing out, that ended up being pretty obvious to people. With Trump, I think it's less obvious, but we have to look at just like his history. Reality game show host, then he becomes president. He's really good at energizing his base, saying stuff, but his actions during president show that a lot of stuff he's not willing to challenge, whether it's the military industrial complex or any other number of things. And we have to keep in mind, Trump in the early 90s stood to lose his entire business empire and his public status and public persona, and he was bailed out by bankers. And one of those bankers was Wilbur Ross, and as soon as he became president, Wilbur Ross is installed as head of the Department of Commerce. Okay, so obviously Trump has in mind, I have to return favors to those people that bailed me out back in the 90s. And one of those bankers that bailed him out was interviewed during the 2015 Republican primary, and they were asked, why did they cancel so much of his debt? Why did they actually, take a financial hit to save Trump during that period of time when they rescued him from bankruptcy? And the guy straight up says, Trump is more useful to us as a brand and a persona than he is as a businessman. And I think people really have to keep that shit in mind. He's there to sell something. He is funded by people like Sheldon Adelson, who are crazy. If you actually look about like what they believe and what they stand for, he just got $3 million from Steve Schwartzman of Blackstone Capital, who is not a good guy, right? And is in bed with people like Eric Schmidt and like the globalists that Trump claims to oppose. Steve Schwartzman has all these business ties to China. So why aren't the China hawks that are supporting Trump over Biden, saying Biden's compromised by China, why aren't they complaining about Steve Schwartzman giving millions of dollars to Trump's reelection campaign? I think we really have to consider the fact that any politician that gets to the national level is compromised and is there to sell a persona and put a nice coat of paint on the agendas of the permanent government that are bipartisan, right? They don't have any ideology except expanding their power and control and screwing the rest of us over.
And you don't even have to look that deep to find it either. Like, there's obvious the stuff on the funding side, but there's also the fact that this dude employed Elliot Engel, John Bolton, has Mike Pompeo as his fucking Secretary of State.
Elliot Abrams
has fucking torture porn Gina Haspel, and
so there's so much that's just been covered in about the last 10 minutes, and I want to try to respond to some of it. I checked 120 GOP national security officials endorsed Biden. They're not, and that's not an insignificant amount. That just, I don't know, it further leads to the Carlinism that bipartisan means a larger than normal deception is taking place. Is one of my favorite George Carlin quotes. This is the 8 years of Kamala Harris, to me, is much more frightening than 4 more years of Donald Trump. And that's not just because, like, I'm a white dude. It's because
I got you, Steve, on that. I got you, Steve. I'm Jamaican. We fucking hate her.
when Democrats are in office like that, especially if they can weaponize identity, then all legitimate criticism is cast immediately, or in Harris's case, it'll either be racism or misogyny, and there will be no other explanation for legitimate criticism whatsoever. And it will be immediately dismissed, and whatever token resistance we've seen from Democrats or the imaginary left that mostly exists on Rose Twitter, that's going to go away. That will go right the fuck to sleep. The anti-war movement died under Barack Obama, and it shouldn't have. Like, the amount of illegal wars that Obama started after he picked up the two he inherited are ridiculous, and there's no genuine, body of legitimate resistance for all of these illegal, murderous, fucking genocidal wars for fun and profit. That there's, I don't know, it's dangerous on its face to have somebody as close to the national security state as Joe Biden is to get, the possibility of him getting elected. Put in someone like Harris, who is nothing more than a dead-eyed servant to, and you've got real problems. I've been trying to tell people for my entire adult life that Congress and the presidency are the public relations firm for the oligarchs who run the fucking country.
Mm-hmm.
The power that Congress has is to take the legislation presented to them by lobbying organizations or the national security state and try and see what they can do to make sure that their constituents get a little bit of a taste off all of the billions and billions of dollars that are running into it. And that, like, they're low-grade middlemen. They're not going to solve your fucking problems.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just talk about a low-grade middleman for a second, especially because we've talked about the possibility of a very authoritarian administration coming in under Biden, and I kind of want to wrap it into Operation Warp Speed. Just this week, Governor Andrew Capo Cuomo has said that we need all 330 million people to be vaccinated twice. 660 million vaccinations from somebody who arguably has passed the most authoritarian executive orders in the entire country under this, and is being floated around as the attorney general for the Biden administration.
Oh, geez.
The New York State Bar Association has already put it on paper back in June that they think it should not only be a mandatory vaccine for New York, but the entire country, and that the Constitution in two separate places has failed us. So I'd like to get your comments, Whitney, on where you think the Capo Cuomo may fit into the mix.
Hey, well, I don't know if it was the second or third part of my super long election video special. Tons of ties to Andrew, to Cuomo in the software side of the fuckery going on right now. And so it's no coincidence that he totally sold out New York State to Eric Schmidt and Bill Gates and all of this stuff. So of course he'd be on board. For Operation Warp Speed, he already, before any of this COVID-19 stuff happened, had New York ready to have 5 smart cities built in it starting next year, and they're not going to even be built by American companies. They're going to be built by Israeli companies. Unit 8200 and all of that stuff. I mean, that's pretty crazy because it was framed as a bipartisan initiative, but there are no American New York companies building smart cities in Israel. So it's clearly a one-sided thing, and it's totally out of control. Eric Schmidt wanted to build smart cities in Toronto and Canada. He wasn't able to, and now Andrew Cuomo has essentially sold his state out to be Eric Schmidt's dystopian playground. It's totally out of control. A lot of people that Joe Biden has fielded for potential cabinet positions are total disasters. waiting to happen. I fully expect that you'll have establishment, the worst of the establishment Democrats, but also some establishment Republicans thrown into his administration. He'll frame it as bipartisan, like I said a little bit earlier. But, you know, his Secretary of the Treasury, for example, that he's fielding is Gina Raimondo, who's the current governor of Rhode Island. He used to be a big-time Wall Street venture capitalist. So really not that different from having, you know, someone like Steve Mnuchin, a Goldman Sachs banker, in charge of the Treasury. The same plundering will continue, and it's worth keeping in mind, too, that Biden was obviously vice president during the Obama administration, the cabinet for which was chosen by fucking Citigroup, right? So to think, you know, the people, the clowns in left-leaning media who are like, we're going to just elect Biden and push him left, have fun pushing these dudes left. Have fun pushing Andrew Cuomo left, dude.
Well,
Like, I mean, you're deluding yourself if you think that is going to happen. These people do not care. Biden has sold himself his entire career as being the guy that reaches across the aisle to partner with the worst of the other party. The guy gave the eulogy for Strom Thurmond, one of the most racist guys in the history of Congress, who, you know, filibustered the Civil Rights Act for like days. You know, a notorious racist. Other Democrats boycotted his funeral. Joe Biden gave the freaking eulogy. That's the type of bipartisanship Joe Biden means when he uses that term. So you can fully expect the worst of both parties in a Biden administration. I mean, it's going to be out of control. Andrew Cuomo is obviously an authoritarian, but you can get authoritarianism from the left and from the right, which I want to stress. But I think Biden and Harris have pretty much signaled that, you know, they'll be as authoritarian as possible, a very mask-off type of scenario. But you have to keep in mind, Trump was like, you know, a mask-off type of politician or president when it came to foreign policy and Americans' imperial wars, openly saying we're going there to take the oil and stuff like that, right? So I would argue that Biden and Harris will be a mask-off approach when it comes to just blanket authoritarianism, but to think we couldn't get that under a re-elected Trump administration, I think is super naive. So that's why I'm saying we have to think about, you know, looking at this through a different paradigm. We can't be like, oh, we just have to wait till 2024 and we'll get the right person in office then. We don't have 4 more years to solve this shit. You know, we have to, the people have to start getting local and building systems, because the state is going, you know, it's going nowhere. They don't care about you. I mean, the World Economic Forum, which is, you know, obviously going to drive a lot of the stuff, particularly for Biden and Harris going forward. I mean, the way they framed the 4th Industrial Revolution and global reset, they're basically like, well, we're going to create this crisis and you're either going to starve or you're going to survive, you know, is how they're framing this stuff. So, you know, buckle up, because that's what the elite are trying to set up here. And if you think, you know, the Democrats are going to bail, you know, help out Americans facing this massive wave of evictions that the country's about to experience, you know, it's going to be the regular people, your neighbors, your communities coming together to pull us out of this. Stop looking for a political savior in the Oval Office. It's not going to happen.
Well, and a lot of big, you know, Rose accounts and members of the, you know, alleged independent media, they've already proven themselves to be absolutely shite on making sure that these issues get the proper attention they need and making sure that they hold elected officials accountable. Because I'm already seeing people going around like, don't worry, progressives, hold your nose. We can wait 24 hours and then we can criticize Biden after we sheepdog for him. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? You, like, this is the best time to hold him accountable when he's depending on your vote. And all you're doing is sheepdogging for him and sitting at polls, handing out water to people and going, yeah, vote for Joe Biden, vote Trump out. This is what we need. And then they want to come at people like us for being like, oh, well, you think that there's no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans? Like, what's wrong with you, bro? It's like, do you really want me to show you who's funding these parties, who's funding Biden and Trump, like their policies, the absolute, like, look at where they align. They align on the worst types of policies, and it's always the most racist, corporatist, imperialist shit that they aligned on. And you think that that can be reformed, and you want to tokenize persecuted minorities to try and advance your agenda. You can fuck all the way out of here with that bullshit. That's what I'll say.
You know, I just wanted to go back to maybe a bit of an ironic statement that Whitney made about this Biden and Harris administration being a kind of mask off on authoritarianism, seeing the opening statement and promise of that authoritarianism will be a nationwide mask mandate of mask on. So they kind of have taken the mask off by saying it doesn't matter, you know, who you are, you're wearing a mask. It doesn't matter what the science says. It doesn't matter how many cases there are. It doesn't matter how many people have died in your state. We're going to take that. And that's a real, in my mind, a precursor to what they're getting you ready for on these mandatory vaccinations. So I guess, is there any hope, Whitney, that even in a Trump administration that these vaccinations won't be mandatory? Obviously, we can't trust the guy, but we have had Scott Atlas now on a couple of occasions say it's not going to be mandatory. And Trump at the rally last night actually say that he was going to be firing Fauci. Basically, the fire Fauci chant started up, and he said, we're just going to wait a little longer and then we'll get rid of him. Like he said,
well, we need to get through the election, or wait until after the election.
Yes.
And we've got a surprise for you.
Yes,
because you know it's Trump. He's got to make it sound like there's a special episode coming up.
On election day, or right before election day 2016, you know, all the chants weren't fire Fauci, they were lock her up, and it was Hillary Clinton. And then Trump gets in and he's like, well, she's had enough of she's had a difficult time, so I'm just going to let her slide, I guess, and let her go retire in upstate New York. And, you know.
She said she'll stay in the woods.
Right. So, you know, I am super cynical for people that don't know me, so I'm obviously going to assume it's a rhetorical ploy by Trump. Fauci is not an easy person to fire. He's been there, like 40 years? Those types of permanent bureaucrats are not necessarily easy to get rid of. You know, I would really hope so, but I think it ultimately comes down to his base and how much his base, if he is reelected, would, you know, I mean, a lot of Trump's base have weapons. You know, you have to keep that in mind. Would they, you know, wave them around and be like, no, for something? I don't know. Or maybe it will be QAnon, trust the plan, go back to sleep. Sort of, you know, what they're doing on the left right now. Like, oh, don't worry. As soon as Biden's elected, you can all go to sleep. And, you know, Mama Jill Biden and Papa Joe Biden will take care of you and rest easy. I mean, there were people on Twitter saying that, like, you know, calling, you know, Joe Biden and Jill Biden the new mom and dad of the United States, like we're all fucking children, right? So, I mean, that's like, you know, QAnon for the left, basically. Trust the plan. You can go back to sleep now type stuff. You know, I don't really know what's going to happen, but I mean, you have to think about Operation Warp Speed outside of the political dimensions. Look at it as an economic thing and look at these vaccine companies. You know, you were saying how Cuomo has said, oh, yeah, we need like 600 plus million. Yeah, okay. Well, the Operation Warp Speed's already bought 800 million doses. You think they're not going to use them after dropping all that money? Those vaccine companies want to get paid, and they're going to get paid well. And they don't give a crap who's in the White House. You know what I mean? That's why they have someone like Moncef Slaoui in charge of all that stuff. Moncef Slaoui has all these conflicts of interest with Moderna, Google, all of this stuff. I mean, you think he's just going to fold over and be like, well, it's not mandatory. Oh, how sad that such a small percentage of people actually want the vaccine. You know, I mean, even in a Trump administration, if they don't mandate it and force you to take it, you know, it's very possible it could be like a soft core way of forcing people to take it. Oh, you want to be out in public? You want to participate in your jobs? You want to go back to school? You know, I mean, if Trump keeps up this whole thing of oh, the states decide, you know, we could definitely see that in most places across the country. I mean, obviously that would be preferable to mandating it. But, you know, at the end of the day in the United States, regardless of who's in office, the corporations win. And that includes pharmaceutical companies and vaccine manufacturers. And you have to keep in mind, too, other big players in Operation Warp Speed. You know, you have the NSA, DHS, the FBI, Google, Oracle, Palantir. It's a vaccine campaign being run by the national security state. Okay. I don't know how much control Trump has over those people necessarily at the end of the day, or any president would, regardless of who's in office and what they say and whether they're a good person or not, right? I mean, we have to think about who is the real government in the United States and who has been the real government, at least since the 60s, if not earlier. And a lot of times, intelligence agencies, the national security state, they get what they want. And of course, all the national security state has very deep and enduring ties to the pharmaceutical industry. That's why you had, Donald Rumsfeld, before he was Secretary of Defense under Bush, was a big time pharmaceutical, was leading Gilead, right? So, it's no surprise to see them teamed up here in Operation Warp Speed. It's really disconcerting. And you have to think about people, the seediest people in HHS were right now, like Robert Cadlick, appointed there by Trump, right? So, at the end of the day, it comes down to rhetoric or whatever. I mean, if mandatory vaccines is like your live or die issue and you feel like voting in this election will have an impact on that, I mean, obviously, Trump looks better. But I mean, we have to plan for the worst. You don't want to be caught with your pants down with all this crazy stuff going on right now. So based on how things look publicly in terms of rhetoric or whatever, well, sure, on the issue of mandatory vaccines, Trump looks better. But I mean, how much do you want to take his word for it?
So when you were talking about firing Fauci and the difficulty there, and then really this military industrial complex, this intelligence community that's kind of mounted up against him, now that we know that the FBI had at least one of these Hunter Biden laptops, because now we have reports of a second one, since before he was impeached, what is the litmus test for somebody within the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA to actually be charged with treason and go to pound me in the ass prison? Because I just don't see it. I can't imagine that you would have a laptop with all the evidence in the world that the Ukrainian corruption was real and that the prosecutor had every right to look into it and that you have every right to ask that world leader about that corruption, and this impeachment go through, that be in the FBI's hands, and then nothing is done. And the only the only reason it comes to fruition, not only in the public arena, but apparently to the president's people, who's supposed to be the executive in chief, is because you had a leaker from the inside. It looks that way. I don't know that I buy the story that, the guy at the computer shop made a copy and then contacted Giuliani's people after the fact. That seems a little suspect to me. What's your thought on that whole situation? Yeah, and I'd like everybody to jump in on this one.
Well, I think the FBI exists to cover up the crimes of the elite, not to actually investigate everything. They knew Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were trafficking kids and involved in the sexual assault of minors back in 1996, if not earlier. And they covered it up this whole time, right? This is what they do. The 2001 anthrax attacks, for example, the FBI investigation, their lead investigator at the FBI filed a whistleblower lawsuit saying it was a giant cover-up. This is what they do. The first director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, was a nasty piece of shit, and he was blackmailed from the very beginning by Bill Donovan of the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, and the National Crime Syndicate run by Mayor Lansky and Lucky Luciano. And that's why he never went after organized crime. And so once that same organized crime syndicate fully and formally merged with the CIA under Alan Dulles, the FBI has been covering up their crimes this whole time. That includes all the big crimes of, the past quarter century and before, right? So, I'm not really surprised this is going on, but, it's outrageous. Obviously, Christopher Wray has clearly done Trump no favors, and I'm once again surprised to see pro-Trump media not going after that guy more. Same with DHS's Chad Wolf and some of these other people. It's like they don't want to throw fire on these people, but like the FBI is not doing Trump any favors, but they're also a key part of this new pivot from the war on foreign terror to what they've signaled this year is now going to be transformed into a war on domestic terror. And now they're basically framing people that are Trump's base and trapping them in domestic terror plots, which they were doing to Muslim Americans after 9/11, and now it's Trump's base, essentially, militias, the Proud Boys, whatever groups like that they're, trying to ramp up as the new domestic terror threat, right? And that's Trump's FBI. And this is what the FBI does, right? I mean, they don't exist to investigate any real crime, in my opinion.
Well, and there's the fact that a lot of the more dangerous white supremacists, racist, imperialists, they're all currently in the FBI and CIA right now. So if you want to combat like white nationalist terrorism or any of that, the best thing to do would be to look into the DHS, the FBI, the CIA, not beef up those organizations, which is what everybody wants to do, Democrats and Republicans. So, yeah.
Steve, you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted.
God damn it. The FBI is the original incarnation of America's secret police. What they're there for is to act as the brute squad or the goon squad for the state. The idea that they're going to somehow change the entire structure of the organization to do the right thing is a little bit hard for me to wrap my head around. The only times we see the FBI stopping some sort of plot is when it's their own plot that they paid somebody to set up,
right,
so that they can be like, look, we did it. We got the bad guy this time. Yeah, that's Dave. Yeah, he's part of our company softball games. But anyway, we stopped them. We got the bad guys. We did. That's all you need to know. Don't focus on Dave. Focus on us doing the right thing here. They're a deeply corrupt, deeply cynical, deeply disingenuous organization, especially when you compare what they do to their marketing.
So I guess my big question today is, when does it start to heat up tonight to where the campaigns not necessarily have to declare victory or concede or do whatever they're going to do, but make some kind of public statement? And do we see unrest in any major city following that first wave of, I guess, media fear-based reporting?
Well, I think it's hard to say exactly when things are going to go down, and I don't really want to paint myself into a corner trying to put dates and times on stuff. What we've been told, right, at least what we can expect, is that in this period between now and probably sometime in January, a lot of crazy stuff is going to happen. Already today, we've, into the lead up to today, we've seen, the seeding of concerns about poll watchers, concerns about voting machine malfunctions. But I think we're in store for a lot more, including this. One of the main things that I'm concerned about is this cyber attack narrative that has been pushed out really hard by people like DHS's CISA, which, by the way, CISA was created because back in 2016, if you remember, instead of states complaining that they were being hacked by the Russians, they were complaining that they were actually being hacked by DHS. And in order to get around that problem, in 4 states to cooperate with DHS on their election infrastructure and critical infrastructure, CISA was created in 2018, and it's currently being run by a former high-ranking the vice president for all of Microsoft's government contracting that managed all of Microsoft's operations with the government is the guy that's in charge of CISA right now. And, he's been lobbying hard for things like Election Guard, Microsoft's solution to all our voting machine woes. It would be a shame if something happened to your election system while Chris Krebs is overseeing it. And Microsoft Election Guard became, the new software running on all voting machines. It's like a fox guarding the henhouse type of situation. It's out of control. And the other thing that really concerns me is that we have had Israeli officials say on and off the record that they want the U.S. to be goaded into a military confrontation with Iran before Trump can be replaced in the on Inauguration Day, sometime between now and Inauguration Day. And what better way to have the Iranian cyber attack or Iranian hacking or Iranian meddling take place and attack our democracy and justify something like that? I mean, they have set all of this stuff up. One of the main companies that have seeded this whole thing about Iran is hacking our critical infrastructure has been Microsoft. They have done so with releasing little, if any, public evidence, and it's not convincing what they have, the statements they have made, and things like that. And of course, the other side are people from Israel's NSA equivalent, Unit 8200, which of course have numerous tech companies that they have produced that maintain close ties to that intelligence agency, even though they're part of the private sector. This includes companies like Cyber Reason and numerous others, including Clear Sky Security. I mean, there's a whole web of these things. And if you want more information on that, I'd recommend you to look at parts 1 and 2 of my election special with Ryan Christian. But I mean, basically, you also have the lady in charge of NSA cybersecurity and cyber command also protecting critical infrastructure. She's married to a board member of AIPAC, the very powerful Israel lobby, and her parents were saved from certain death by Benjamin Netanyahu's brother. Right? So, like, that's pretty crazy when you have Israeli national security officials saying, yeah, we want the U.S. to go to war with Iran pretty soon. And then you have these same agencies warning, the NSA, run by that lady I just mentioned, and then DHS's CISA, releasing all of these warnings in the past month saying stuff like, Iran is meddling, get ready, Iran's doing this. And then you have Google and Microsoft also come out and say Iran tried to hack a presidential campaign. Iran tried to hack people's Gmail in the U.S. and all of this stuff. I mean, it's really alarming. And could we see something like that happen? And then, because of the social media censorship, where's independent media going to be to push back on that narrative and question if it really was Iran or not? And the fact that they've been drumming this up so hard in just the past few weeks really alarms me, and the fact that we have people that would be very willing to blame Iran in charge of this stuff freaks me out. And also, you have 2 former NSA directors that get paid that have been paid off by Team 8, which was set up by a former Unit 8200 commander with Eric Schmidt of Google. Right, Mike Rogers, former NSA director, former head of U.S. Cyber Command, works for Team 8. And NSA people, when he was hired, were like, I can't believe he took that job because it's essentially run by a foreign intelligence agency. And they hired him not because he's a nice guy or whatever, but because he knows all about the weaknesses in our critical infrastructure. That's what NSA officials were saying when Mike Rogers was hired by this stuff, or by that group. I mean, it's nuts. And I really hope it doesn't happen, but they've been setting up this narrative and they've been doing it for years, but just in the past month, I mean, it's almost, in even the past 2 weeks, like every day or every 2 days, they'll issue another warning about cyber attacks from Iran or China. I mean, they're definitely gearing up for something. And now abroad in Europe, you have like the UK announcing that there's going to be an imminent terror attack now today. You have France on lockdown, acting like they're going to have another terror attack. You had Austria hit with this attack like just the other night. I mean, they are clear. There's something clearly building here that I think should really alarm us all. That's much bigger than just the U.S. election. So, I mean, obviously we have to see how it develops. But all this seeding of a dark 11 weeks, a dark winter, darkest winter, this push for war with Iran, and all of this stuff. I mean, yeah, I think things are going to get bumpy. When they'll get bumpy? I mean, I'm not going to put a date on it, but I mean, we need to be prepared for this stuff. Sorry. Anyone want to chime in?
Just total fucking silence. I mean, you're gonna follow that. I would imagine around prime time this evening that both campaigns will come out and make a statement. And like we started off the show talking about, the main important thing is ensuing chaos, uncertainty, and the fear that is generated by people not knowing whether or not they've got 4 more years of Trump or 37 minutes of Joe Biden and then the remaining 4 years of Kamala Harris.
Right.
I don't even think Biden would make it to his inauguration. I
so
really
either.
don't.
Mhm.
I don't either.
I think we all agree on that. Yeah.
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 I think that's reality. I mean, again, how long did you see? I talked about the Philadelphia thing. Did anybody catch when Barack Obama tried to call him out 3 separate times?
Yeah, I saw that.
And then at the end of it all, which was already kind of just like this barrage of terrible and just clunky moments, he forgets that he has to wear a mask because that's the show. And like Barack's got to like stop him and make sure he has his mask to walk off with the whole thing. I mean, the guy can't even run on his one campaign promise that everybody's going to be masked up. On top of that, I keep saying this because I can't believe it hasn't been a major news story by anybody. But in these ads I listen to on the radio, I'm in the Quad Cities, so there's a ton of local ads and presidential ads. It's Joe Biden saying, if and when this country's ready to go back to work. And I just keep thinking to myself, what the fuck do you mean if? What is this if talk? Like
The robots.
like that is a ballsy statement to run on. Like people are like, yeah, maybe if we're ready to go back to work. At what point do you say this guy has a 4-year term in office and work is necessary to live? I mean, is that just the next step in this Orwellian
He doesn't know what he's saying, though.
Yeah,
Jason. Do you want to take him at his word?
I do think the Democratic Party is going to try and push some sort of UBI that basically eliminates the shitty social safety net that we currently have. And I think that there will be a redefinition of work that only serves to punish like 95% of us. I think in order to get their technocratic panopticon, thank you for that, Whitney, by the way. I think in order to achieve that, they've got to fast track automation, fast track a very conditional UBI. They've got to create this sort of like, I don't know, but half paid peasant class that doesn't really do anything.
Neo-feudalism.
Yeah.
That's what I call it. Yeah.
I think that this is it. This is the automation nation, UBI, getting ready for a transhumanist ploy. And though it hasn't been in headlines much, they're touting the success of Starlink as they've now started to beta test some of the speeds in rural areas. And I mean, they're not super impressive, but the Starlink internet in, rural places in, what is it, Montana, I think they said, they're getting 100 megabits per second, which is my old landline over at Time Warner. That's pretty good. It's definitely good enough for me to triple stream, if I got 100 up, or even if I got 10 up, so 1/10 of that. So I imagine it's going to be more of that push of, look, everybody's going to be taken care of by our DARPA internet, Starlink's cousin. That's going to be part of it. And you're just going to have to take certain, vaccinations that'll eventually interface with your Neuralink or whatever the fuck else they're selling to you 15 years from now. And we have to push back hard. Like I watched the Jones with Rogan and Tim Dillon JRE podcast, right? And people were wetting themselves over it and telling me how good it was. And it had its moments on human trafficking, still had a little disinformation on the Bohemian Grove I didn't love. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, Elon Musk comes up and Jones looks at Rogan after Rogan tells him he's a nice guy, and he goes, "No, I'm sure Elon's really nice. That's not who I'm talking about." Fuck you, motherfucker. Elon Musk
chickened out.
A fucking nice guy. And I would not treat him as such in an interview. I would treat him like the predator motherfucker he is. And now with these softball questions and, oh, your Cybertruck is so cool and you used to bang a fucking model. I don't care about that shit. I want to know what it's like, founding PayPal with a cutthroat son of a bitch like Peter Thiel. I want to know what it's like to cut NASA deals with rocket technology that was obviously obsolete 50 fucking years ago. I want to know the real fucking questions, Elon. What's really going on? And for Jones to roll over on that question, and really nobody in the alternative media pushing back on him and that transhumanist agenda, that's a huge problem, because I really do believe he's an intricate part on selling people in that hard infotainment culture that this is the way we have to live.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, the way, if you look at Elon Musk and you also look at Peter Thiel, like, let's do Peter Thiel first. So Peter Thiel, right, he frames himself as a libertarian. And if you listen to him when he talks about why he made Palantir, he was like, well, if we didn't make Palantir, worse people would have made Palantir. And because myself and Alex Karp made Palantir, we made sure that there were privacy protections built in from the very beginning. Right. And so those privacy protections they're talking about is that you have to have a certain level of clearance to be able to access more and more information or whatever. And that's how they try and frame it. And that's actually the same argument about built-in privacy that the fucking CIA and John Poindexter and DARPA made for total information awareness, right? But that same argument is used by Peter Thiel and also by Elon Musk to great effect. They're like, well, you know, Elon Musk, I had to make Neuralink because if I didn't make it, some bad billionaire would have made it. And I'm a nice billionaire and I'm cool and I smoke pot on Joe Rogan. So you can trust me to put the chip in your brain instead of someone like Eric Schmidt or Bill Gates, right? I mean, it's totally a salesman ploy. You know, I mean, these people are part of that predator class, but, you know, some of them want you know, these guys are narcissists too, right? They like want to be cool and they want to have their public persona and have their fanboys and all this stuff. I mean, clearly Elon Musk loves that side of it, you know, so he's just like willingly playing that part. You know, he wouldn't be I mean, that's the argument these people make, like, well, if I didn't do it, someone worse would have done it. But like, dude, I don't want your shit sandwich no matter like how you made it or what type of bread you used, shithead. Like, no. So, I mean, unfortunately, yeah, I mean, good point, Jason. There hasn't been enough pushback on Elon Musk specifically. And there really needs to be.
Even when Musk was like, we'll coup whoever we want to.
Oh my God.
That guy.
Well, it's these things that like these technocratic billionaire ass cunts like to do, where they like to position themselves as like thy holy watchdogs. Because if we're the humane ones, we don't want to be the evil ones. Like me and Steve on Sunday, we talked about this latest Cory Morningstar article where she's talking about the Center for Humane Technology.
Yeah.
God forbid there's a center for evil technology out there that's trying to blow a hole in the fucking ocean. No, we're going to be the ones doing deep sea mining the right way. We're the cool billionaires. That's us. Watchdogs in this bitch. Let's go.
They've granted 1 million fucking claims to deep sea mine. 1 million. And it's like the people who wanted deep sea mining the most have now that's Benioff positioned himself as the watchdog for the whole thing. And you've got to go through them. You've got to go through Benioff's Ocean Institute or whatever he calls it in order to be approved for this process. So it's only going to be his friends. It's only going to be his allies who get approved for this thing. And then, yeah, what the hell is going on in someone's head when they're like, I'm going to rip a giant hole in the ocean floor to suck out all the creamy goodness inside? Like, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this or not, but drilling giant holes in the ocean probably isn't a good idea for anybody. It's probably
Steve,
not.
I'm for good things and against bad things.
Well, Biden, good things, not bad things. Orange man bad. Orange man bad. Don't vote bad. Vote Biden. Like, do you think he could actually get that out in a sentence?
I don't know.
At this point, I'm with Jason. We'll we'll see.
I mean, it's almost like if he does declare victory tonight, obviously the media
That
will
speech will rule. No.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's like the media will cut like 2 quick sound bites on it. Joe Biden gives fiery fucking speech as he, takes.
Yeah, he'll be like, I beat George, and I'm gonna go golf and candy for everyone. That'll be the Joe Biden victory speech.
Mitt Romney never stood a chance.
Clap for me, you bastards.
You don't get nowhere unless you ask. I'm Joe Biden. Give me a look. I'm running for Senate. If you like me, vote for me. If not, give the other guy a try. Like, what
now somebody pass me a 12-year-old.
Oh man. I mean, I thought like Jeb Bush's like please clap moments were entertaining last cycle, but the Joe Biden gaffes have really been a small gift for those of us that know we're fucked either way.
Dude, wandering off stage when the camera's on him. I mean,
I hate to laugh.
Steve, I just gotta wander off stream right here real quick, but I'm gonna keep talking to you.
If he wasn't responsible,
all rights endowed to us by the thing.
You'd feel bad for him if he was your grandpa, right? Like
use, right? To like roll him out here.
If he wasn't such a shit heel, like it would be. He would be a sympathetic character, and you would have taken his car keys away like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
The first time you found him naked in the freezer aisle at the grocery store.
Listen, the thing is, though, 2.5 years ago when he was talking in front of the CFR about, withholding $1 billion from the Ukrainian president, he still had a lot of Joey B in him.
That's true.
You fast forward to the primary debates, and, a point I didn't get to get out because we kind of moved on. When we were talking about election rigging and not speaking about the DNC, and you guys, started basically talking about the vote. How about the fact that the media didn't even push him as a front runner and instead pushed people like Pete Bootlicker, Grandma fucking Oatmeal, Amy Klobuchar, and others. And they all just decided in a coordinated effort when they were beating the shit out of him in every poll in every other state to just say, we're going to have it a day. We're done. We're done. We're gonna get out. We fixed it, and now Biden, Bernie with our rigged bullshit, and no one's really going to be able to check any of these votes, even if he didn't win because COVID-19. I mean,
the mainstream media kind of recycled their candidates and tried to like go through cycles of pushing a different candidate on us. Like I think first it was Kamala, and then she got. So
people found out about her,
which warmed my heart. It warmed my half Jamaican heart to see Kamala get exposed the way she did. And then I think after that it was Pete, and he's just a fucking CIA lab rat, so he fizzled out. And then it was Warren, and then of course Warren decided to go and criticize thy holy Bernard Sanders, so Rose Twitter completely canceled her ass. And then now they don't know what to do at all. So it's like, all right, guys, call it a day. Drop out, vote for Joe Biden. Get a call from Barack Hunt Obama, and let's make this happen.
They rigged primaries for Pete Buttigieg, and then we're like, go vote. Tell Pete to go drop out. Like, why'd you go to the fucking trouble of rigging Iowa for Pete Buttigieg just so you could have him like 3 days later be like, all right, I'm out. Joe Biden's clearly the guy. I mean, yeah, I just won a couple of states, and yeah, no, he's in 5th place. Yeah, that's the power that
it was all about stopping Bernie. I mean, whatever they thought would be the easiest to stop Bernie, no one else had a chance of winning in like what was it, South Carolina besides him, and I think that's why they rallied behind him. Was just out of necessity. And like Jason said earlier, Biden's a placeholder. The person they wanted this whole time was Kamala. She was chosen by the Clinton donors, back a couple of years ago as like the next one. And so, the vice president doesn't have to be voted in or anything in a primary. They just pick them. And so that's the person they really want in office. I mean, I think that's pretty clear at the end of the day. Also, I wanted to bring up, I think a lot of these other people, the younger people, right, especially Pete, whatever his last name is, you know, he's going on mainstream media all the time. And I think they're going to try and march him out maybe for some sort of, you know, higher office thing, or he'll have a position in a Harris administration, the Freudian slip, right, of Kamala a couple
They
weeks ago.
keep doing
right?
that too.
She's done it like 3 times now.
Yeah, because she knows.
Would it be? I could see it being Harris Booker, because that was the one that scared me the fucking most. And when that was actually happening, I mean, 2 sociopaths that'll smile in your face and just do whatever they want. And then you look at somebody like Bootlicker, and they really sold you big on he's a Rhodes Scholar and his military experience. I mean,
he worked for the CIA.
Yeah, I mean, again, that could be one of the most dangerous national security
Totally.
of all time. Let's be
They'll
honest.
probably put him in charge of the CIA.
He worked
this
for
smooth talking about we must shift the paradigms of our democratic bastion foundations in this societal mindset that we live in, and I'm gonna repeat these platitudes in Norwegian for you now, because that's what I do. I wasn't made in a lab, guys, I promise.
This is a guy who worked for McKinsey and Associates before he joined the Navy Reserves. Like he already had a cush job at the destabilization factory, but went straight into naval intelligence, and still to this day in the Naval Reserves is an, you know, active duty intelligence officer. That's who they put on stage, and people weren't supposed to find that out. And when they found that out, they weren't supposed to be immediately fucking uncomfortable with it. I mean, aside from the fact that he clearly was created in a laboratory in language, like that aside.
Hey, Steve, but what about his boyish charm?
That's one plucky sumbitch right there. I guess I was wrong about him.
Steve, you sound like leftist QAnon right now, Steve. Be careful.
I credit to Aaron Mate for coming up with the phrase blue anon to describe the Russiagators and the Rachel Maddow crowd and all those people. They really are blue anon. They really are.
Well, I mean, I was referring to Tim the CIA tool when I said leftist QAnon, because that's a term I think that his ass coined.
Fuck Tim Pool.
But Pete Buttigieg or whatever, a thing that didn't get covered about him a lot, and why I think he'd probably be involved in a Biden-Harris administration, is because he in South Bend, Indiana, a tiny town, one of the first cities in the country to install smart sewers and smart city infrastructure in the entire country. I mean, obviously, because he's a McKinsey goon or ex-McKinsey goon, you know, is why he was obviously on board for that, right? But, you know, we're going to see a bigger push for that next year, especially with, you know, like we talked about earlier, Cuomo selling out New York to have smart cities pop up there starting next year. So obviously Biden and Harris, backed by Silicon Valley billionaires, obviously going to be super down for that. And, you know, Pete Buttigieg, whatever. I didn't know how to pronounce that, by the way, for a really long time, since I don't live in the States and don't watch cable news. And I thought it was but a gag for a long time. But, you know, whatever, you know, fuck it. He's a douche. So, you know, I think it's really likely that he may be involved there, right? Because now he's a face people know. He was on, Jimmy Fallon was like, hey, you know, people have given you the nickname Slayer, Pete, because you just slayed the Republicans on Fox News or whatever. I don't know. That nickname made me really think, though, it would be kind of awesome to see him battle it out as Slayer Pete in the Coliseum or something. Give me some bread and circus. You enslave me, at least, you know.
You know that guy just reds out. Like, when it comes to violence, like, just totally, the lights go out, and then when he comes to, there's like 15 corpses on the floor, and he doesn't know where he went for an hour.
Well, there was this one moment on the debate stage where I think he was getting pressed by Tulsi Gabbard on his, you know, shite foreign policy ideas. And he is on that face. You can see he's on that stage, and you can see his ears getting red, and he's like looking like a petulant child, like, Mom,
There was a debate where he was like, I'm the only guy who's fucking killed a man on this stage. Like, that's how fucking, like, he was trying to throw his, everything was about his military service.
Iran. Mom, they don't want me to go to war with China. Come on, go away.
He's a scary dude. I mean, I think that we can all agree that he looks like, you know, if you picked Alfred E. Newman up as a teenager and put him into a black program to make him into some kind of Jack Reacher killer-like character with soul. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to the MI3 stuff, right? And then into the full Manchurian Candidate. Like, that could be the third reincarnation. The Sinatra version's great. I love it.
Oh, man.
But, folks, if we had a Pete bootlegger, fuck Liev Schreiber. I mean, we star him in this film. It's perfect. I mean, he is the Manchurian Candidate. Just how I feel.
This whole thing was worth it for fuck Liev Schreiber. That's funny. That's fucking funny. No, man, Pete Buttigieg is what happens when you let unchecked hubris and damn near unlimited money make the decisions in your party. You know,
Mike Bloomberg, Steve.
I don't even know what Bloomberg is. Like, I haven't even been. Yeah, he's a fucking cipher to me. I'm sure that Bloomberg, when he wakes up in the morning, makes a report to, you know, some handler at Mossad or something like that. But I don't.
He reminds me of a more well put together and with more resources Ray Cohn. I'll be quite honest with you. He has that same kind of dark persona. He's not as, I guess, media frenzied as Roy Cohn is looking for headlines. But, I mean, he has that same psychopathic look. He has all those connections. He feels authoritarian. He jokes during the debates about how he's like the best candidate up there and doing a great job while he's fucking bombing. And if you look at some of the suits that were brought up against him, you know, basically firing pregnant women that wouldn't fucking have abortions and shit. He just seems like that straightforward, sociopathic guy that has one goal, and it's for him and his cronies in the Good Guys Club, which he was a part of. Soros, Bill Gates. Schmidt's missing from that one, but you have some of the other great.
He's on Bilderberg, that's why.
Yeah. You got Buffett in the Good Guys Club.
Yeah.
And you look at that, and of course, Oprah. I don't want to forget Oprah. Oprah and Bloomberg are tight. They're like fucking peanut butter and jelly over there.
Oh, that's so gross.
Yeah, those are your buddies. I mean, if you think about it, Roy Cohn, you know, he did his dealings with the mafia. He had his clientele. He had his Stone connections, obviously the Trump ones, the gamble.
He raped underage boys and, you know.
But you look at Bloomberg, and I feel like Bloomberg, Lord knows what he does in his bedroom, but you look at that top tier of people that he's colluding with, and he's with that foundation class, right? The ones that go beyond the tax realms, that can shield their true intentions like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation do by funding the media. If you haven't seen Tim Schwab's 2 articles on that, I encourage people to check it out. So to me, you know, Bloomberg's a really dangerous guy, too. He's a guy I could see somewhere in the Biden administration.
Yeah, totally. Hey, it's worth pointing out the whole red mirage, blue shift narrative that's being promoted so much around Election Day right now about what's going to happen, and it's going to look like it's Trump, and then the mail-in ballots are going to roll in and throw it for Biden, which obviously is a recipe for, you know, chaos. That originated with a data firm that was literally created out of whole cloth just a few months ago by Michael Bloomberg, 100% funded by him. And then their big thing was to seed that narrative of the red mirage and the blue shift. Around the same time the Transition Integrity Project was set up, right? So, you know, it's just a different arm of this whole thing that they've already created a narrative in order to create a situation where one candidate's gonna look like they win, and then the other, it's gonna be thrown by some weird circumstance, the blue shift, whatever, to the other candidate, and then the original candidate that looked like they were going to win, the red mirage, Trump in this case, right? You know, his supporters will obviously be like voter fraud, mail-in fraud, and then you're going to have both sides arguing about who's in power, and, you know, the whole scenario that these people want to create is either that the president and the vice president are chosen by the House of Representatives and the Senate respectively, or that there is no president-elect on Inauguration Day, and then it's unclear what the military would do in this situation. All of these simulations from these guys and in their documents and whatever from their think tanks and crap all hint that, oh, what, the military might have to step in. And, I think it's no coincidence that they're, throwing that out there. And that's the same time when Operation Warp Speed's supposed to go live, courtesy of the freaking military.
Scary.
That's delightful.
I really hope they don't coincide with one another. Because, obviously you could construct a nightmare scenario where the military just decides maybe the House and the Senate don't decide. Maybe they throw them for a full loop. And
hey, who knows, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's everything's on the table. And then if, you talked about the terrorism aspect, God forbid we were hit with some kind of a biological weapon. Well, we already have the infrastructure for contact tracing, and we already have the infrastructure for producing ventilators and all this other military stuff. We could really see a COVID 1984 2.0 scenario.
Yeah, they've said this though. I don't know if you've seen this, Jason, but Bill Gates and globalist think tanks like the Council of Europe or whatever have said after COVID-19 comes pandemic 2, which is a bioterror attack, and they've been saying this whole time. And the same people, DHS says, the next 9/11 we're on the doorstep of, and we're see it building, and we can't stop. The whole people that are seeding this whole bioterror attack narrative say it's going to be neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and stuff like that, right? It is really unfortunate, but I think we have to keep in mind the timing of this electoral chaos and the fact that Operation Warp Speed, the date they say for it going live is January 2021. So if you're voting for Trump because you think he's not going to mandate vaccines, why is that? Why did they choose that month? Why did the national security state, which is running Warp Speed, choose January 2021 when all of this chaos that we're being told is imminent, right? And starting today and going to go on for 11 weeks, it's going to be at its craziest in January, obviously, based on what we know, unless there, is some sort of bioterror event before then or whatever they have in store, or some cyber attack or whatever, all this stuff they've been saying is going to happen. They clearly chose that month for a particular reason. And Inauguration Day is at the end of January, basically, January 20th. So will Operation Warp Speed go live before that? I don't know. You already have Pfizer manufacturing hundreds of millions of doses already for their vaccine, or hundreds of thousands, for their vaccine, and it hasn't even been approved yet. And they say, the end of November, the end of this month, the Pfizer candidate will be approved, right? But they've already started manufacturing for it, and there's this January end date on it. We have to keep that shit in mind. Maybe it's not even about us thinking, oh, we can, fight back against mandatory vaccines or avoid warp speed through the election. Why did they choose that month in particular? When all this chaos is supposed to be at its peak, per what we've been told, this is something to keep in mind. And why I keep stressing the need for us to, as individuals, to start doing stuff in our communities and not to hope that the government will ride to the rescue or some politician's going to ride to the rescue. You need to make plans with your community and your neighbors and your neighborhood or whatever, your network, support network, about what you're going to do in a lot of these situations that the media is saying are inevitable or likely to happen or going to happen or however they frame it, right? I think that's where we have to have our heads at this point.
From the moment that I started Slow News Day, and there may even be people watching right now that were with the show back then, the one thing that I've tried to stress to everyone is that we have to, this is going to echo what you're saying, and I'm glad you said it, you have to make your community as sustainable as possible. You've got to make it so that you are as least reliant on a governmental system or a corporate structure as possible, because it's gonna get really fucking rough really soon. And there's a number of different ways that I think that can go about. But one of the first is that people have to ditch this idea that their neighbor is somehow the bad guy because of who they voted for.
100%. Thank you, Steve. Mm-hmm.
When you play into the hate thy neighbor shit, all that does is reward the national security state. All it does is reward the existing power structure, and the existing power structure is designed to fail you. That's what it's supposed to do. If you are on the outside of the existing power structure, if you're not already in the fucking club, it's designed to fail you. But your neighbor should be able to help you to the extent that your neighbor can help. And that's something that people really need to focus on, because again, like, things are going to go back to the way they were. And that's what everybody keeps saying around Joe Biden too. Like, we're going to get back to where it was before Trump. Those are the exact same conditions that gave you Donald Trump. Well, you got Donald Trump because of the way it was before Donald Trump. Do you not fucking understand that?
Well, when you were talking about the neighbor aspect of it, I think it's really, really important, especially to go back to the Occupy movement, right? And that mantra of the 1%, the 1%, we're coming for the 1%. I keep trying to point this out. Most of us that were educated in this country, you were in a classroom of 30 to 40 people. That's roughly 2 classrooms. And usually there were 2 or 3, depending on the size of your school. 1 out of 150, 100, 200 of those kids are not the fucking elite. They're not the people running the show. And it should alarm you that when they even talk about these tax hikes, they go, listen, if you're making under $400,000 a year, you don't have to worry about these tax hikes. Well, the people making $400,000, 1.2, even $5 million a year, that's the upper middle class. I would argue to you, those are still your neighbors. Those are the rich kids that your kids go to school with, throwing the big parties and employing the community outside of the corporate structure. Those people are about to get fucking gutted. Their taxes are going to go up 40 to 60%. I got news for you. The real enemy that's making $400 million a year or $40 million a year, his taxes ain't going fucking up. They
don't pay taxes.
Not a goddamn chance he is. So that's the true, they keep talking about that. And when they say, well, your taxes aren't going to go up, it's not good for you that your rich neighbors' taxes are going up. It would be better if the people that have their own private islands actually paid taxes, and that corporations like fucking Google paid taxes, or Amazon paid taxes, or Apple paid taxes, but they don't. And they never have under this modern system, because it's set up to be corrupt like that.
Hey, really quick, because I'm going to have to go out in a little bit. Some stuff happened while we were live, so I just want to throw it out there in case you guys want to discuss. BitChute taken offline, totally deplatformed, pulled out, pulled out by the roots. So that's power to Rockfin. I don't know. I hope the people at Rockfin have plans for this shit, because it looks like that's how deplatforming is going to advance. Pull it out by the roots, like they did this to Gab a couple of years ago. In case people remember. Another thing, David Icke deplatformed from Twitter just now. You were talking about earlier, Jason, his account was deleted today, just an hour ago. And the New York Times tweeted out an hour ago, the role of declaring the winner of a presidential election in the U.S. falls to the news media. The broadcast networks and news outlets have vowed to be prudent. Here's how it will work.
So just so everybody knows, I went and checked out BitChute.com, and it does seem to be up. I don't want to be
back now. Okay,
yes,
good.
It's up. Hey, I always check these things. But yeah, it does seem to be up. But just the fact that either there could be a DDoS attack, or they could go into the people that host the site and get it out of there is very frightening. Again, we're, in my opinion, we're just several hours away, 24 hours away from digital chaos at the very least. Whether we see, outward physical chaos, rioting, looting, the digital chaos is obviously on the way. I think, again, today when I was on the back end of YouTube, I'd never seen it act like that. And you'd be hard pressed to convince me it's not acting like that, because they are putting their measures in place to immediately silence anything out of the mainstream narrative of what they want to declare after this is all over. And thank God for Rockfin. I am going to premiere this on YouTube after the fact, basically because we didn't really call any winners. Is this harmful content? Can we talk about the election, pre-election YouTube? Can we talk about the war games?
Google says no because we said bad things about Google. So
I mean, just by nature of the four of us getting together, that creates harmful content in the eyes of Google.
maybe
I
we
did
should
see
all wear a
Whitney
paper mask of Eric Schmidt's face, and
right.
they'd leave us
I
alone.
did see
Yeah.
that the New York. I just saw on Twitter the New York Times deleted that tweet, by the way, a couple of minutes
shit.
ago. Yeah.
Wow.
So they put it out there and then went, oh, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Well, it's a good thing Twitter isn't forever and nobody took a screenshot of that.
It's a good thing archives don't exist.
No, but it tells you where their head's at, right? And there was a lady that tweeted earlier today saying Joe Biden plans to announce, if he's declared the winner by the news media, before this New York Times tweet would declare victory and start forming a government immediately. So, I mean, the New York Times is basically showing like that's a plan, and are they going to coordinate something? I mean, obviously that's another way besides the whole Red Mirage narrative to totally upset Trump's base and Trump supporters, get them in the streets, which is exactly what these national security people want for their new war on domestic terror, right? Saying, oh, the Trump people are violent, oh, they're armed, they have guns, they're militias, they're saying it's a democratic coup, right? I mean, this is what they're trying to set up. So I really hope people don't pay into this and can see this as being engineered to, divide us as much as possible so that they can benefit and come in and impose their maximum order as the antidote to the maximum chaos, but hopefully, I think a lot of Americans, and this is like my big hope, right, is that are tired of the shit, and are like, I'm not going to go riot. No, thanks. Like, I don't want to watch the country be ripped to pieces just because my guy didn't win. I'm really hoping enough Americans can just be like, no thanks. Things have been crazy enough this year. And so, I've seen some people be like, they were expecting these big riots in DC. Apparently there aren't even like none of that's going on. It's just like regular old whatever, no lines forming. I don't know. I mean, they'll probably try and engineer it if the news media calls it for Biden tonight or something like that. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely see some shit go down, but, obviously this is being engineered by the media and the people that control the media, some sort of clusterfuck since they've already announced it. But I really hope, the average American is like, no, thanks, I'm not going to be a part of this.
Well,
Silence.
and there's just better things to protest. There's so much better things to protest about. I can name like Julian Assange, just censorship. So many better things to protest to begin with than an election that's already rigged to begin with between a racist, corporatist, imperialist tool of a national security state and a corporatist, racist, imperialist tool of a national security state. So there's much better things to protest than that. Sorry.
Well, these are the same people there are people that were posturing, at least, that they were going to take to the streets and burn it all down over Amy Coney Barnett, or whatever her name is, the Supreme Court Justice.
If we burn it all
Like
down,
that,
okay.
that's what. Yeah,
Man.
Most people will never go to a protest in their life. Most people will never attend one. They may attend a parade that they're calling a protest, but if your protest has corporate sponsors or the approval of one of the two major political parties, it's not a protest. It's fucking a competition for a medal in the virtue signaling Olympics and nothing more than that.
Yeah. Well, like I find it so funny when liberals were just like, if they try and push like a justice through after RGB, after RBG's death, we're gonna burn it down. There will be riots. I'm like, oh, sweet. Oh, sorry, what?
No, but they do that to like,
riots are
that helps Trump though.
It does.
At the end of the day. because they're like, there will be riots. Most Americans don't want freaking riots, and they don't want their businesses or their homes to be like, in the middle of craziness. And that all plays into this whole thing of getting one side or the other side to call for the state to come in and ride to the rescue, and restore order and all of the stuff. And that's what these people, the national security state, whatever, backing both candidates, that's what they want, right? So, it's really problematic, the whole narrative they've set up. And what they've really done is they've created both a right-wing domestic terror boogeyman and a left-wing domestic terror boogeyman. And what they're, Antifa being the left-wing one, right? And they'll just roll that out whenever it's convenient for them. Today we're going to crack down on right-wing dissent. Let's use, white supremacist or QAnon as the big straw man and paint all the people we don't like with the same brush and say they're all part of QAnon or they're all white supremacists, even if they're not. And, they're a domestic terror threat, so we have to do something. And then the left wing, oh, well, Antifa did this. And so now we have to get all the people that on social media said they oppose fascism because they're Antifa then. And that's where this shit is going at some point, because this is all predictive policing bullshit that they're going to use to clamp down. So your social media history, what you text to your friends, whatever, they're going to roam all that data with AI and be like, well, this person seems to be a critical thinker and they have no place in our transhumanist future slave society. So are they
Unleash
Antifa
the
or are they a white
pre-crime unit?
supremacist? Yeah, basically.
Well, and you have events like what happened in Beverly Hills just this past weekend where, you get a 2-for-1. You get Antifa essentially confronting the, conglomerate of Proud Boys, Trump supporters, just that whole area. They call it freedom rallies, and they have it like every couple Saturdays or so. And you get those major clashes, which are just completely exacerbated by the police as well, because they'll be batoning people through the whole thing while you have coked up Trump people fighting the black bloc, and it just manufactures so much discontent for the other side. I understand where the absence of patience comes from. I understand where you feel the need to punch a bootlicker, but at the end of the day, we're better off teaming up with these people against the national security state than constantly fighting each other and learning to hate each other more and more. So,
well, these are essentially cutouts, right? These are essentially prop organizations used to further divide people, to paint people further into one corner or another of support, and to rally public, I guess, approval or acceptance of a severe crackdown by a police force. And again, man, I'm sure that there are genuine people who go buy a pair of black skinny jeans and dye their hair purple and call themselves Antifa. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's people at a Walmart right now looking for the right color beige so they can buy some new slacks and go be a Proud Boy. And I'm sure those people aren't, paid members of the national security state or police force. That's not the problem. The problem exists within the leadership of both movements and how they've been positioned and used as weapons of the national security state. And I think they should fucking realize that by this point. And be like, wait a minute. But just because I think that doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's still people walking around right now, well, Bernie Sanders is the best. He's just the best, and he wouldn't steer us wrong,
Hey, he is a good sheepdog that will steer you back into the waiting arms of the DNC, though, Steve.
That's his hip hop. His hip hop name is Sheepdoggy Dog.
Right. Okay.
That they keep you in this team mentality, whether it's left, right, conservative, liberal. If you want to get out a little bit on the flavor, then you can be a Proud Boy, or you can go extreme Antifa, etc. There's all these subgroups that still bring you into the false left-right paradigm every single time. And even when one of these groups starts to get out of the norm, which I would argue was the original Tea Party started by the 9/11 Truth Movement, pre-Ron Paul, that then got usurped post-Ron Paul into this mainline Republican movement where people like Sean Hannity were promoting it. Meanwhile,
Michelle Bachmann.
yeah. Meanwhile, a year earlier
Yikes.
was coining the term Paul-tard. So I think the big thing that we need to do is get people out of that right-left mentality. I think it's hard because, again, if you look at Trump, he was a lifelong Democrat. Most of the policies that he, has passed are like 90s Democratic policies. If you look at post-COVID 1984, the guy might as well be fucking Bernie Sanders. He gave everybody a UBI. He tried to give them more, and he cut fucking medical big pharma costs, or tried to anyway, via executive order, something none of the Democrats could do on medications. So, I mean, that would be like the wet dream of the supposed progressives, yet orange man bad. With that being said, guys, it's been about 2 hours. I got the girls stomping around upstairs.
Sure, I gotta go too, but there's a new Joe Biden gaffe that I would like to end the broadcast with, if that's okay. I'll read it out, and you can look up the clip on Twitter if you want to hear Biden say it. So I'll begin. I had a job with a nice country club kind of pool as a lifeguard. I played ball with a lot of great black athletes, but I didn't know them. I mean, we knew each other. They were friends, but I didn't know them. And it was a great education. It was like the Green Mile.
What the fuck?
This is when Biden was asked about making remarks about his return back home after voting.
Hey, listen, just so people understand how offensive that is, who have not seen
the Green Mile.
The black man that is portrayed by Michael Clark Duncan in that film is portrayed as, I would say, a trope of, loving, low IQ black men during slavery or just post-slavery. That's basically what the character is. This down-home country person talking like this with a heart of gold. For him to say something like that, like we talk about inherent or implicit racism, that's fucking inherent or implicit racism.
Bro, he had a fucking hood fantasy about a dude named Corn Pop. Like, are you kidding me?
A hood fantasy.
Oh man, the only thing that would make this election amusing to me at this point is that if they bring out Corn Pop, Corn Pop apparently died, but if they raise him from the dead and march him out, and then he and Biden can duke it out with sock and boppers, I'd be okay with the election chaos they've created if I could just watch that.
That would be enough. That would be enough. What if he?
I was gonna grab me a chain. I was gonna beat him with a chain.
What if you could get? I'm just saying, in Corn Pops as a little prize. Remember when you were stoked about the little prize you got in there? Joe Biden, like a young buck Joe Biden, wielding a chain, just standing there. And then on the other side,
I would be fucking terrified.
Dude in a leather jacket and assless chaps, because that's what the guy is, with the Corn Pop head as the other big toy. And then you could have Corn Pop's crew, because he ran a bunch of bad boys. And you could
Oh my god.
All right.
That would be hilarious if it wasn't terrifying.
Steve, Whitney, guys, thank you guys. I guess we'll see each other on the other side of hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if there's still an internet in a few days, see y'all soon. If not, when the Silicon Valley smoke clears or whatever, I don't even know what the fuck's gonna happen. Just when things stop being a little less clownish, hopefully.
That's normal.
All right, I'm gonna stick around for about 5 more minutes on my channel and close out. But thank you both. This has been a hell of a way to pass part of election day.
All
right,
guys.
See you guys soon. Thanks.
See y'all.
Take care, Whitney.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was fun.
That was fun.
I'm gonna be on the convo couch tonight at midnight on the East Coast, 9 p.m. here in California. Misty Winston, Sarcasm Stardust, co-host of Facts on the Ground, and our fairly frequent co-host on the Assange Vigils. She'll be joining me. We're going on the convo couch
hell yeah.
as Action for Assange.
Hell yeah.
So that's what I guess the focus of that will be, and maybe by 9 p.m. we'll have both camps declare victory at that point.
Oh yeah,
You know?
well, I mean, I'll be
Yay.
headed out around closing time to see, like, to just observe the closing procedures at my local polling place. And I already, I don't know if they played it yet, but I already sent Fee over a video of me asking one of the ladies about power outages, and they haven't had any problems yet. So the main takeaway from that is there's like way more machines, there's way more like poll workers and trained poll workers too. So it's just like the fact that they didn't phone it in like they did for the primary kind of pisses me off. But you know, there's for fuck's sake,
Cartoon. We live in a fucking cartoon.
It's true. It is. What's the latest on the website, Josh?
I'm gonna start importing it tonight. I just got all the thumbnails regenerated like 2 hours ago. I had to do that
Okay.
first.
And
So hopefully by tomorrow or Saturday it should be up.
Okay.
I'm
so
sure I'm
we
gonna
should
find some
hopefully
bugs,
be
so.
able to show it to the people on Sunday's show.
It should
Okay.
definitely be up by then.
if there's
So-
internet by then.
Yeah, no shit.
Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, we will be live with Robbie Yeager, MCSC network researcher extraordinaire, breaker of a ton of fucking stories over the last like 7-8 months. It is always a good time when Robbie is with us. Let's see, Sunday, documentary filmmaker Juan Passarelli and Vanessa Beeley will be joining us, and that's going to be fun. That's going to be a lot of fun.
I think Jesse's gonna be on the vigil tomorrow.
Okay, Jesse Zerwell.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Will be joining us on the vigil.
That's his
tomorrow.
first time. It's his first time, so that'll be good.
Aw, all right. Yeah.
We'll have to break him in nicely.
I mean, it's not like we're mean or anything.
He's
we're
fiery.
not.
It'll be a good one. He's
stoked.
fiery, man. I like that guy.
Huh?
I said he's fiery. It'll be a good one. I like that guy.
Right on.
Jesse
I haven't seen that side of him. I've only seen him be really mellow and conversational.
Follow his Twitter, man. He's funny as
Yeah.
hell.
I copied his nickname that he came up with for Noam Chomsky, which just cracked me up, but it's Num Chomsky, and
Yeah.
it's fucking hilarious.
All right.
Nah, dude, he's funny. Oh, he's funny as hell.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that. He's always been hella laid back. We had the the first time they had me on the show on Facts on the Ground, like we did like fucking 3 hours worth of conversation and it all got lost.
Oh man.
Damn.
So we ended up rescheduling and doing it again. But yeah, that's about it. Glory, what you got?
So, it's my first general election that I am eligible to vote in. So, was very happy to spend this momentous occasion with a cast of people who live rent-free in the national security state's head. That was a lot of fun. Bro, fuck this election though. Oh my god. And yeah, just
Help us all.
That's funny. Well, yeah, and if anything like incredibly insane happens between now and when I talk to Pasta and Fee later, we'll probably jump in and talk about it.
what even defines insane anymore? Because we already live in a cartoon, so it's like
I mean, like a hacking of the electrical grid in major metropolitan areas, or spontaneous riots or something like that. I mean, the National Guard is in 16 major U.S. cities today, like specifically for today.
That's normal.
And Whitney talked about plainclothes guardsmen dressed as poll workers. So everything is positioned for something that we could consider insane to go down, or I guess that most people would consider insane, and we'd be like, fuck, I hate it when Whitney's right.
Right? It's never about anything good. Never. I one of these days I want Whitney to tell me I'm getting a puppy or something, because
right. So in American,
did he predict like the Miami Heat winning the finals or something like that? Like dead ass. The last good prediction I've had was when I said back in October a year ago that the Heat would win the East. That's the best prediction I've had in a damn while.
At least that's happy though.
Yeah, it is. Are you fucking kidding me, Josh? Well, you saw I was hype as hell when that shit happened.
You were all about it. It was.
I can pretty safely predict that the Cubs will not be World Series winners. I'm gonna go ahead and call that for next season. It's not the Cubs. I wish it was. I do, but I got one. I did. You
got one in your lifetime. That's all you
that
don't
is
get.
more than some. That's for sure. There are people who, dude, my poor dad, he went his entire life without the Cubs winning a World Series, and he was a die-hard fan, dude. And it was the next fucking year. Yeah.
That's
If
rough.
there's anything that was good about like my grandpa passing, it's the fact that the last championship he saw was the one that the Raptors won, which is where like my Jamaican side lives now in Toronto. So that was really heartwarming. But yeah.
All right. Well, that's gonna do
now
it.
that I've derailed the conversation to sports.
Hey, now it's part of your. It's part of your charm.
I don't know. I mean, don't get fooled, man. I can talk some shit about some sports for a while, but this ain't. We'll start a different podcast, Glory, for that.
And we gotta have Nico in on it too, because like every time I see him in person, we just go on and on and on about that shit.
Sports anger.
Start a hockey podcast with Placone.
I'd actually watch that. Hell, I'd even produce that one.
I'll run it by him. God, I'd have to stop trying to like pirate stream NHL games and probably have to break down and get the fucking whole shit. God damn.
It's actually pretty cheap, and you can watch. If it's still the same, you can watch old Gretzky games and shit, which is pretty awesome.
Okay, good, because I was starting to sound like work there for a second, and I was getting nervous. Well, yeah. Well, thank you guys for hanging out. Many thanks to Jason Bermas and Whitney Webb We covered an incredible amount of ground there. And I'm glad that we got to go for as long as we did. I thought it was only going to be like an hour when we started. Really, I was fucking stoked.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Hey, I think this is probably the funnest election day I've ever had, honestly.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit different when you don't have a horse in the race.
It's liberating, honestly.
You know, it is.
Oh,
When you
it's
know
so
that it's
nice.
a
I
fucking
walked
sham.
straight from my polling place to the beach and just fucking chilled there, and it was like, let me worry about, not getting scratched up by this rock here, and just it
Chill.
was great.
Well, fuck, man. Yeah, that'll do it for election day pre-results. The wild speculation show. No, actually, it wasn't. It was fucking painfully sourced.
Brain breaking, in
Even
fact.
even when we have a wild speculation show, it's still sourced.
That's true. That's true. My name's Steve Poikinen. One more time, 9 p.m. tonight, I'll be on the Convo Couch with 9 p.m. Pacific tonight. I'll be on the Convo Couch midnight Eastern with Misty Winston. Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, Robbie Yeager will be joining us. Sunday, regular time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We will be joined by Juan Passarelli and Vanessa Beeley, and that will be fucking awesome. So be there for that. We love you. Good luck to us all.